at that work. So this week will be both a training, a capacity development event on forest landscape restoration and the Rome, or Mayor, as well as being an inception to the development and publication of a transboundary assessment report. So we look forward to working with you this week, hearing everything you have to say about the drivers of degradation, about understanding the socioeconomic impacts that we hope to achieve and the multiple benefits for both people and planet. I think what will be important to remember throughout the week is that you have already done a lot of work. Much data has been collected in different phases of the MRU. So some of it might seem a little bit repetitive, but what we are trying to do here this week is explain the methodology and the process of doing assessments and data collection. So welcome again, and thank you for your attention.
Effectivement, démarré en janvier 2018, bien que nous avons fait un lancement régional en juillet 2017 à Freetown. Je voudrais très sincèrement que les consultants, les assistants techniques et les volontaires nationaux soient très assidus. Car cette formation est très importante. Et vous aurez la responsabilité des activités qui seront menées sur le terrain, c'est-à-dire la qualité du rapport et la qualité du rendu au niveau régional. À cet effet, vous pouvez profiter de cet atelier pour poser toutes sortes de questions concernant les activités que vous devez rendre sur le terrain. Avoir assez de clarification pour que le travail que vous allez produire soit une fois de plus de bonne qualité. Et cette formation sur la méthodologie d'évaluation d'opportunités de restauration est très importante pour tout un chacun de nous. Pour ceux qui ont déjà entendu parler ou qui le pratiquent, ça c'est l'occasion de partager leur expérience avec les autres. Mais pour ceux qui pour la première fois entendent parler cette méthodologie, ça va vous aider dans le travail de consultation et aussi pour votre développement personnel. Parce qu'en sortie d'ici, normalement, vous devez vraiment maîtriser cette méthodologie. Comme je le dis, sera un plus pour vous et va vous aider dans votre carrière. Une fois de plus, je vous demande d'être très assidu pour cette formation.
We improve livelihoods of our people in communities in forest landscapes or forest areas. And there are two key components that we must remember of the project. The first component is the integrated forest ecosystem management. And then the second component is sustainable management of transboundary waters. As you are aware, Liberia is divided along with our Mano brothers like Sierra Leone, Guinea by our transboundary waters. So it's important that we take note of that. Another key thing I would like to mention, we'd like to say a big thank you to the GEF, that is the Global Environmental Facility, for funding this project, and the key implementer, which is the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, for sustainable use of the transboundary water basin and the biodiversity resources within the Mano region member states. The importance or the overriding objective of this, you all be aware, is that the project seeks to promote a holistic approach that will have an integrated ecotourism system in water management and design a participatory and community-based natural resource management platform in which communities can be trained to develop alternative sources of income. Alternative sources of income is important because if we do not find a sustainable way of finding livelihood for our people, especially the communities within those forest landscapes, then it means we are going to face the same problems that we have been facing in the past. Where are we as FDA or the Liberian component? The Liberian component of the project was able to hire 1 technical assistant, 4 junior technical assistants, 4 4 landscapes in Liberia. And those 4 landscapes in Liberia are, namely 1, the Gola landscape, 2, the East Nimba Nature Reserve, 3, the Wonigisi, 4, the Sako. Today, because of challenges beyond our control, we were able to complete the hiring of 4 consultants for the room, that is the Restoration Opportunity Assessment Methodology, under the umbrella called Phase Green Life Forest Ride Partnership, and 1 consultant for water resource management studies that will give us baseline information which will contribute to successful implementation of the project. So we're able to purchase 1 vehicle and 4 motorcycles for the implementation of the project. It's important that we mention this because we believe partners from the GEF would be here, and it's important that we relate this information to them. Okay, we also would like to tell all the national executive agency members that are here that we look forward to having a very good workshop with you. And last but not least, on behalf of the FDA, we do all that we can to ensure that you have a successful workshop and we make sure that it stays successful. Thank you.
J'attends une connaissance meilleure dans le cadre de la restauration du domaine forestier. En même temps, dans la gestion des ressources naturelles.
Moi, réellement, je veux, après cet atelier, comprendre cette méthode d'évaluation des opportunités, les différentes étapes, afin de mieux contrôler les consultants qui vont collecter des informations sur le terrain. Parce que quand on dit de contrôler quelqu'un, il faut savoir un peu plus que lui. Donc c'est une autre étape que nous allons commencer aujourd'hui. J'attends réellement que l'atelier nous apporte beaucoup d'informations dans ce sens. Merci.
Un peu dans la même ligne que M. Nicolas, mais j'attends essentiellement 2 choses. La première, c'est mettre à niveau les connaissances au niveau de tous les acteurs sur le terrain. Ça, c'est le premier aspect. Le deuxième aspect, c'est de voir réellement comment les gens vont appliquer cette méthode sur le terrain et quand est-ce que ça va démarrer. Parce que je pense qu'on est un peu en retard par rapport aux activités de terrain. Et j'attends vraiment que les connaissances soient améliorées et que les gens démarrent.
Là, je vais ajouter un peu le facteur temps. Parce que vous savez, dans nos zones là, nous sommes pratiquement pas loin de la saison des pluies. Or, en matière de télédétection, alors la saison sèche fait une fréquence et la saison des pluies fait une autre. Donc si d'ici le mois de mai, le juin au plus tard, les travaux n'ont pas démarré sur le terrain, il faudra attendre le mois de décembre pratiquement pour pouvoir commencer les travaux. Alors ce qui fait que nous serons encore beaucoup plus en retard et ça peut un peu ternir ou du moins un peu donner comment je vais appeler ça, un peu ternir les résultats de nos travaux. Donc c'est pour cela vraiment on aimerait savoir quand elles sont démarrer et pour que les gens puissent déjà...
International initiative to achieve 350 million hectares of restoration by 2030 with an intermediate goal of 150 in 2020. We are already very close there. So there's an incredible opportunity for restored integrated landscapes. Okay, and of the 2 billion restoration opportunity that was seen, you can see that most of this is in Africa, with a little over 700 million hectares. Now, it is important to remember when we talk about forest landscape restoration, this tends to be mainly in mosaic landscapes. So those are, I think we have a picture coming up on that. Could you go back one more? Oh, there you go. So what we mean here with mosaic restoration is that it takes place in landscapes that have multiple land use and also is being used for different benefits by different actors on the landscape. It is very rare that we talk about restoration that's happening only, for example, in large tracts of forest. So we are actually dealing with these types of landscapes all over the world, and they actually represent the largest percentage under the forest landscape restoration. So wide scale is much less common. Next, please. So forest landscape restoration is not, for example, how agricultural and both hydrological, water, coffee, sugar for products, windbreaks for habitats and corridors for wildlife and fauna, biodiversity and ecotourism all come together in a landscape to provide both the services on the ecosystem services side as well as for people. So we cannot manage to understand forest landscape restoration if we don't understand how those different uses of land come together. Forest landscape restoration is also about something else. It's about understanding all those actors, and in the restoration opportunities assessment methodology, it's very much about bringing those people together to identify, negotiate, and implement practices that restore an agreed optimal balance of ecological, social, and economic benefits of forests and trees within a broader pattern of land uses. So this is at the basis of the road that we will be looking at. And it has a couple of principles that are important to remember, but it's in fact creating the space in which to discuss forest landscape restoration and the opportunities we want to achieve that is at the heart of doing road. Because when we are talking about landscape restoration, who are the opportunities for? Where do the opportunities lie? We have limited resources, so how do we need to prioritize those opportunities? Next. So we have already, of course, many examples we can build on, and this will be part of some of the work we'll be talking about in the next couple of days, called Successes in Stock Taking. Move on to the next. So, I think here is the goal and the approach, again, outlined. So the goal is to transform deforested and degraded landscapes into healthy and productive systems, benefiting human well-being, supporting countries, organizations, communities, and enterprises in defining and implementing pledges to the Bond Challenge, which is to restore 150 million hectares worldwide by 2020 and was extended to 350 by 2030. Next, right?
Basically, this gathering is a meeting of national executing agencies of 4 Mano River Union countries, basically Republic of Liberia, Republic of Guinea, Sierra Leone, and La Côte d'Ivoire. They are here to discuss eco-water, ecosystems, water, natural resource, transboundary management in forest landscapes. That's why we're here.
So how far Liberia has gone in this process?
Well, Liberia is making strides. Right now, what is happening, we have the Liberian component of this Mano River Union project. We hired 4 consultants and 1 consultant from the ROOM. ROOM is the Restoration Opportunity Assessment Methodology that will be employed for the 2 major components of this project, which is 1, integrated sustainable resource management for forests, and transboundary water management. As you may be aware, we have to find sustainable livelihood sources or means for our people or communities that live in the forest. So these 4 countries conglomerated with funding from the Global Environmental Facility to ensure that we improve our forest landscape.
So is it this mechanism you people have put in place? Is it intended to protect wildlife? You talk about the animals, you talk about other wildlife species.
Wildlife is another component.
Okay.
This is for the conservation.
All right.
Wildlife is where you look at species in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
Although, in essence, conservation breeds and help wildlife, and wildlife help biodiversity.
Okay.
You know, so
is mainly for the conservation of our forests and our forest landscape. For Liberia, we have 4 different areas within the landscape. We have one in the Gola area in Papolo, the other in the East Limba Reserve Nature Park, the other in Wonogisi in Lofa County, and the Sapo.
Someone listening to you might like to know the state of our forests. What is like? Is it depleting or are we still conserving?
I think it's a combination of both.
Okay.
But we tend to do more conservation than depleting.
Okay.
And what is important is that we have to go back to restoration of our forests.
Okay.
Very soon, in the vision of the Honorable Managing Director, Honorable C. McDowen, and the management team, we will be launching a massive reforestation for restoration plan. Meaning for every tree we cut down, we should be able to plant at least 5 or 10 more trees, because it was those good conservation practice and habits of our forefathers who did not cut off all the trees. That is why on record Liberia have 43% of the remaining West African forest, the second largest in Africa to Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo.
I understand you have international facilities. Can you please tell us a little bit about how the White
Beg your pardon?
You have a facilitator here from, I think, Washington. She introduced herself.
Yes, she represents the International Union of Conservation for Nature. She's Marian Kuzet. She's a Dutch national but works in Washington, D.C. We also have proxy from the Global Environmental Facility. The members are here. And we also have members on representatives of the national executing agencies from the Mano River Union countries, namely, as I said, Guinea, La Côte d'Ivoire, and Republic of Sierra Leone, and Liberia, of course, FDA, a lead in the sector.
So at the end of this workshop, what do you hope to achieve?
Beautiful. As you may be aware, this workshop is basically for the restoration opportunities assessment methodology. What are those methods that we can put together, as I said, to ensure that the 2 components, the first integrated sustainable resource management and transboundary water management, is improved? How do we improve the livelihood of our people in these areas, in the Mano River Basin? How do we ensure that we improve biodiversity alongside conservation vis-a-vis wildlife and restoration of the forest? These are questions that need to be answered, because we'll be aware the hunting practices of our people, the farming practices of our people, and wildlife practices, if it's not put in check, degradation of our forests can soon set in, and you and myself will have difficulty. Because again, it's important for our listeners to know that the forests provide the means of what absorbing all the carbon and improving photosynthesis for us to live.
All right, your name once again?
Trokon Aramo, Technical Advisor, Project and Financial Management,
Okay,
FD.
thank you, sir.